condemn efforts by the two regional blocs, the Southern African Development Community, SADC, and the East African Community, EAC, to bring peace in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where a war between government forces and M23 rebels is raging on. Some truck drivers, Zimbabweans included, who say they are failing to reach some parts of the Democratic Republic of Congo due to the civil war in that country, are optimistic that the joint meeting held over the weekend by SADC and EAC leaders will bring the much-needed peace in the region. Truck driver unions say some of their members, gripped by fear, are stuck in highways with goods destined for the DRC and other nations. At the summit, SADC and EAC jointly called for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire. But fighting continues in the outskirts of Goma, captured by rebels a few weeks ago. The leaders from the two blocs also called for the resumption of the Luanda and Nairobi dialogue between the DRC, Rwanda, and M23 rebels. The war in the mineral-rich eastern DRC has displaced millions and killed thousands. The M23 rebels are allegedly backed by Rwanda, an allegation that Kigali has repeatedly denied. The United Nations and the United States classify M23 as armed rebels, while Kinshasa designates it as a terrorist group. DRC is a member of the SADC and EAC, while Rwanda is just an EAC member. Ndinogamuchirai vadiwa vatariri nevateereri muchirongwa chedu che Livetalk. Nhasi tichikurukura nezvematanho ari kuedza kutorwa nemasangano enyika dzekumabvazuva kweAfrica nedzekuchamhembe kweAfrica eSADC neEAC ekuedza kuunza runyararo pakati pemauto ehurumende yeDRC nevakapandukira hurumende iyi vechikwata cheM23. Kurwisana uko kwaurayisa zviuru zvevanhu nekusiya mamiriyoni vatiza misha yavo kunonziwo kwakanganisa zvakawanda zvinosanganisira kutadzisa vatyairi vemagonyeti kupinda munyika iyi. President Emmerson Mnangagwa chairs SADC, while Kenyan President William Ruto chairs East African Community. Let's hear what President Ruto said in the meeting.
The recent escalation of hostilities in Goma and the surrounding areas is a stark reminder of the increasing fragility the situation presents, and that only collective action to facilitate a negotiated solution will offer relief. The lives of millions depends on our ability to navigate this complex and challenging situation with wisdom, clarity of mind, empathy for the millions whose lives and livelihoods have been plunged into uncertainty.
That was East African Community Chairperson and the President of Kenya, William Ruto, speaking at the joint East African Community, Southern African Development Community meeting. Now let's hear what SADC Chairperson and Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa said at the same meeting.
I thus challenge all of us to approach the agenda before us with openness, honesty, flexibility, and commitment to building a lasting peace for Mother Africa. This historic summit of our two regional blocs is testament to our shared commitment. Let us do much more to realize sustainable peace in African values and heritage.
That was SADC Chairperson and Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa at the joint SADC EAC summit in Tanzania on Saturday. Meanwhile, despite M23 rebels calling for the resumption of school in the eastern city of Goma, which they captured in January, classrooms are sparsely filled. Many families are fearful of sending their children back to bullet-ridden buildings. Reuters' Sean Hogan has more.
It's the start of the day at Mama Mule's school in Goma, but only 23 students of the usual 1,200 trickle in for class. The clashes between M23 rebels and Congolese forces have left families displaced, and despite a call from the rebels for schools to resume normal operations, parents are fearful of sending their children back. Explosions have left gaping holes in the roof, and school buses are littered with bullet holes. School director Rose Victorine Sudila Mwembo says the damage done is both physical and mental.
Our school was badly hit. I don't know if you've seen the other side. Even the buses that transported students were damaged. When you arrive here, you wonder, will life ever return to normal? Will the children be able to focus on their lessons after everything they have witnessed? The bomb fragments, the destruction, seeing where the bullets landed. Will the students truly settle back into their routines? We ask ourselves these questions because it's not easy. Even we, the staff, feel scared. How will we continue with the children? Only God knows.
The disruption comes after intense fighting in Goma, the region's largest city, which fell into the hands of M23 rebels at the end of January. Congo alleges the rebels are backed by Rwanda, a claim Rwanda denies. Some schools, including Mama Mule's, have been used as refuge centres for displaced families, further complicating efforts to restore normalcy. Before the fighting, students were approaching the end of exams. Mwembo says parents now call to say they've moved their traumatised children to safer places, and some aren't even in the city anymore.
Let's take a short break. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
In times of change, when the world seems uncertain, and what we hear doesn't reflect what we see, we seek the truth. When we are told only part of the story, we lose trust. In moments of crisis, our dreams, hopes, and wishes for a better tomorrow depend on a free press. At Voice of America, we bring you the stories that people take risks to see. We connect the world and unite it with truth. At Voice of America, we show you the whole picture.
For those that have just joined us, please note that we are streaming live on our Facebook pages, VOA Shona, VOA Studio 7, and VOA Ndebele. We are also live on YouTube, VOA Zimbabwe. Today on Livetalk Diaspora Forum, we are discussing joint efforts by the SADC and EAC to end the fighting in the Democratic Republic of Congo between government forces and M23 rebels, and what the end of the war means to the region. To discuss this, we are joined by a political analyst and a member of the Zimbabwe Exiles Forum, Diana Zimbudzana Chambara, who is based in South Africa. And we are also joined by Dr. Vusumuzi Swanda, who is the chairperson of the African Diaspora Forum and is also based in South Africa. Welcome to our show, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. Good evening, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. Let me start with you, Dr. Swanda. How has the war in the DRC affected the region, the SADC region?
Well, thank you very much. Look, the war in the DRC has practically, destabilized the region. And it would appear that it has even caused countries, to be at loggerheads, to start not to trust each other, like what we have seen happening between Rwanda and South Africa. And obviously, we know that it is the protocol of, SADC countries that they repel, including the AU, any forces that are seen to be insurgents or fighting an elected government or what they consider to be a lawfully elected government. Now, what we have seen now is that we have seen, business that uses particularly, the DRC because of the mining that takes place there and the linkages, coming to a halt, and more people, running away from, particularly Eastern DRC into neighboring countries. And this obviously means that the issue of migration, continues to become a problem with the number of countries being affected because people have got to move. And unfortunately, it does appear that there is a political agenda that is much greater, because if the discourse that we have seen between the president of Rwanda and the president of South Africa is anything to go by, it would show that obviously Rwanda has an interest and has, had a hand in fueling, the instability that is taking place in that particular country. So what that means is that the SADC itself has got cracks within itself, because of the divisions that we have. And of course, we know that some insinuations have been made about countries, in the SADC, going into DRC because they've got mining interest to protect. We've had this before, from Zimbabwe being labeled the same, up until we've got, a lot of, army generals and politicians being fingered for benefiting unlawfully in the DRC. So it does appear that DRC continues to become a point of division for SADC countries.
Thank you so much. Please just stay on the line, Dr. Swanda. Mr. Zimbudana Chambara, we saw efforts by SADC and the EAC over the weekend. Do you see that bearing fruit?
It might. Actually, now there seems to be more concerted effort from the two blocs to then solve the issue of the DRC. Remember, this is not a new issue. It's an issue that has been besting the DRC. Before it was called the DRC, remember it was called Zaire. Then after that, when it changed during the time of Mobutu Sese Seko to now the Kabilas and now Tshisekedi, the Congo, the DRC has been in conflict since then. In fact, historically, we might even go back to Patrice Lumumba. But anyway, since we are talking about this conflict needed to be solved. But there is a problem that there are groups within these blocks, two blocks, the East African bloc and the SADC bloc, who then have vested interest within the Congo, the DRC, and they would rather see the conflict continuing than it being resolved. Because we also sent our soldiers in 1998 up to about 2000, and still the DRC conflict did not abate. And now you look at South Africa, they've sent their soldiers on a peacekeeping mission. The conflict is continued. In fact, now the rebels have taken over parts of Goma, including the airport. So maybe this time these two blocs are really interested in finding a lasting solution to the DRC war situation.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Swanda. Oh, thank you so much. Ndisandauya kwamuri, Dr. Swanda. Rikaitambire mumwe guest wedu. Let's welcome our guest, another guest. That's Mr. Fidelis Mukarati, who is the Secretary General of the United Truck Drivers Association. Welcome to our show, Mr. Mukarati.
Inotenda magadi mkoma jonga anoatereri wese.
Aiwa kuno kutirwa penyu ndobva nango kukandirai mubvunzo. Tiri kuona hondo iri kuitika mu DRC pakati pemauto eDRC neM23 anonzi vakapandukira hurumende iyi. Tiri kunzwa kuti nhengo dzenyu vanova vatyairi vema trucks kana magonyeti vanofamba vachipinda mu DRC kana kudarika nemu DRC vachienda kune dzimwe nyika zviri kuvakanganisa. Mungatitsanangura kuti zviri kukanganisa zvakadii mabasa enyu?
Ndinotenda chaizvo. Congo yakagara ingori war zone. Kunorwiwa, kune maproblems akawanda-wanda. Asi manje nehondo yaveko nyika iyi yave a major security risk kuvatyairi vese. Chekutanga kune macurfews ave kungoiswa yekuti ave kungoiswa haphazard zvisina kana notice. Ndechekutanga kwave nemaroadblocks nekuvharwa kweimwe migwagwa iri kungoiswa futi zviri kutadzisa vatyairi vedu kufamba zvakanaka. Kwozotiwo crime yawanda kuCongo zvakukonzerwa zvinokuti mota dzawandisa especially kumaregions akaita seHaut, Katanga, Lualaba neEastern DRC. Tine vatyairi vakakidnepwa, tine vatyairi vakaurawa, tine vamwe vari kubatwa vari kurohwa. Saka yatoo problem chaizvo zvokuti matravel agents mazhinji nemamwe matransporters vakutopa warning yekuti please mota ngadzirege kuenda kuCongo.
Saka zviri kukanganisa zvakadii mafambiro enyaya dzeupfumi muchiona imimi? How is this disturbing the economic flows or ties between countries?
Zvatokanganisa zvikuru, especially nyaya yekuti yekufamba kwemotikari. Tikatarisa kutakurwa kwemagoods, especially kubva kuSouth Africa achipinda nemuZambia achipinda muDRC, yatove dambudziko zvikuru. Zvokanganisa zvakare trade pakati peDRC nemaeastern countries zvakafanana naRwanda, Uganda, Tanzania neSouth Sudan. Ave kumira makambani emarori. Izvi zvave kuita kuti vatyairi vakawanda vacharasikirwa nemabasa mukunge marori asisiri kufamba. Ndodambudziko guru ratatarisana naro panguva ino.
Thank you so much. Please do stay on the line. Let me go back to Dr. Swanda. Dr. Swanda, you heard what Mr. Mkarati just said. He spoke about the dangers that truck drivers are facing in DRC, and they've decided not to venture further than where their safety is guaranteed. He talked about curfews that are being haphazardly enforced by rebel groups, the spike in crime rates, and some drivers being kidnapped and harassed. Do you see that, or do you think that the two blocks, the SADC and the East African community, and also the major player in this conflict, the M23 and DRC, they are going to broker a peace deal that will enable peace to prevail in the DRC?
Well, look, the war in DRC, I think, as we all know, it has been, it's an old war. And unfortunately, the problem that we have in DRC is only a reflection of the African politics, or the politics that we have in Africa, where, even elections don't really mean anything. They are only meant to rubber stamp, decisions of the ruling political party. And, they are not as transparent enough to ensure that, opposition parties and other people, are happy with the outcomes of the election. You will remember that for the last two elections in the DRC, the Eastern Congo has not been accessible, results and ballot papers, not reaching these particular areas, including, the issue of the Ebola ailment during, some elections. Now, for that particular reason, there are people that obviously support, the M23 because they believe that these people have got a legitimate reason for fighting, because they don't believe that the election, reflect the will of the people, in the DRC. They don't think that, the political leaders in that country have been elected by the people, and they are therefore, there because people want them to be there. So that is why, at the end of the day, this conflict, has got, parties that support it. And to therefore think that it's going to be an end, as you heard what Rwanda said, that, there are countries, what is South Africa doing, in the DRC? What that basically means is that they think they have a better, excuse, for supporting, because they believe that, that those are their neighbors. And anyone who supports, Tshisekedi and his government, they have not said it loudly. But in so saying, you can see that the tension in DRC is not only a DRC problem, but it's a reflection of the aspirations and of the people that also come from Rwanda, that, goes back to the Tutsi and Hutu, problems. So this is a problem that will not come to an end anytime soon. There might be, seeming, peace, agreement or ceasefire, that might be, brokered, but they will not go any further because, their interests competing interests in the DRC, which includes maybe as well foreign international interests because of the minerals that DRC has got. So DRC is only a playing ground, of all these competing interests within Africa and outside of Africa. And therefore, whatever that we are saying now, it looks like we are in for a long haul.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sibanda. Please do stay on the line. Ndoya kwamuri amai Zimbudzana Chambara. Tinoona kuti munoitika matambudziko akadai nehondo dzakadai uye zviri kuonekwa nevanhu vakawanda zviri kuitika muDRC. Madzimai nevana, children and women, they suffer most. Munoti
icho ndo chokwadi chaicho, nekuti kana zvichinge zvatanga chakaipira kunana DRC kune hondo inenge ichibata mai nevana vavo vachiri vadiki, koita hondo inobata mai nevana vavo vati kurei, vaya vanenge vati samu. Vati samu vaya vanogona kusikotorwa naivo vati vemarebels vonoitwa child soldiers. Saka iyoyo itorizve rimwe dambudziko rinenge riripo. Saka ukatarisa izvozvo unoona kuti mai vanozoona kuti zviri nani vatakura nemukwende wavo. Uye zvino news dzese dzakangozara vana mai vakatakura nemukwende vari kutiza hondo iyoyo nevana vavo, nekuti vanenge vachityira kuti dzimwe dzenguva ndinogona kuurawa, bara rinogona kundibata pano navana vangu tikafa tose, kana kuti ndinogona kurarama asi mwana wangu mukomana ati samuyu kana mwana wangu musikana ati samuyu anogona kutorwa unobatwa chibharo didi kuurawa zvene imwe nzira. Saka izvozvo zviri kubata madzimai nevana zvakanyanyisa nyaya dzehondo idzodzidzo.
Ndouya kwamuri Mr. Mukarati, tichitarisa mashandiro amaita nematambudziko amataura sevatyairi, ndedzipi dzimwe nzira dzamungakurudzira kuti dai dzaitwa, nokuti tinoona kuti panotauriranwa zvinhu zvinogona kutora nguva paine kutaurirana. Ndezvipi zvimwe zvamuri kuita kuti munge muchibatsirawo imimi sevanhu vanoshanda munharaunda, mune matanho amuri kuita here semasangano, nokuti tinoona kuti imi muri union, mune zvimwe here zvamuri kuita kana kupiwa mukana wekuti munzwikwewo nevari kutungamira nhaurirano?
Nhamo yedu hombe isusu takaisvitsa kumatransporters, kuti matransporters dai vanga vagona kutichingura at least cargo iri kuuya ichibva nematrucks kubva kwakasiyana, zvikuru sei ari kubva kusouthern part, igone kuchiitwa transferred ichiiswa kumatrucks ekucongo kana yasvika pabhodha. Ava vajaira hondo yavo vagara vari mukati mairi. Saka tanga tichikumbira kuti isusu tigone pabhodha reZambia neDRC tichirega kupinda mukati. But iroro rato ine dambudziko zvakare, nekuti munoona imwe cargo iri kuya iri mumacontainers obva yatransitwa zvakadaro. Tine mamwe maproblems zvakare awandisa ari kubata especially madrivers edu. Madrivers ari mukati meDRC izvozvi vari kurwara, vamwe vakaadmitwa muchipatara, hatisi kukwanisa kuvabudisa vagone kubuda. Congo ine zvirwere zvakawandisa, hana monkeypox, hana Ebola, and ukanga wapinda muchipatara chekuCongo seinguva ino iriko izvezvi yehondo, pane ma-forced vaccinations ari kuitwa kumadrivers ari muzvipatara. Kana kuti usati warapwa unofanira kumbovaccinatwa against polio. Polio yatakabayiwa kudhara, asi kuCongo vanoinsista kuti unofanira kuvaccinatwa futi. Kune zvirwere zvakawanda, vana malaria, zvirwere zvinobva muchikafu, vana typhoid, vana cholera, zvese izvozvi semadrivers tatambuka. Tine matanho atiri kutora ekuti tiri kutaurawo nematransporters kuti vagone kutibetsera kuti tione kuti tifambise sei panhau iyoyi.
Thank you so much. Dr. Sibanda, I would request that you respond to this question in Isindebele for the benefit of our listeners. There are some citizens in countries that have lost soldiers in the DRC M23 war, and those citizens are calling for the withdrawal of their troops from DRC. Will we see these countries taking heed of the calls by citizens to pull out of DRC, or they will continue fighting and losing members?
Empeleni sesizwile ukukhalaza kwabantu abashonelwe ngabathandekayo babo empini ikakhulukazi lapha kwelase South Africa. Kanti simzwile ungqongqoshe wezangaphandle lo omele ophethe ideko ethi yena amabutho awase South Africa akeze ukujika ekhaya ngoba abantu bayakhalaza ngoba kunezivumelwano phela ezenziwe ezendaweni ukuze abantu bayokulwa basize izwe lase DRC. Okusho khona ukuthi into njalo etshelwa abantu ukuthi abantu abase DRC kumba ibutho lase South Africa lase DRC liku peacekeeping mission kuzwakala sengathi akulona iqiniso. Abantu abakutholayo kuyikuthi iSouth Africa isiza ukuthi kube nokuthula kodwa esesikuzwile kusho ukuthi iSouth Africa yanxuswa uhulumeni owase DRC ukuthi bayosiza iDRC ukuthi ilwisane nalaba abe M23 okusho ukuthi ngempela leli butho lilaphana lisempini lihambe ukuyolwa ngakho alikulungelanga ukuza liphindele la ekhaya. Kanti nalabo abakhalaza ngokuthi mhlawumbe phela lokhu kwenziwa ngoba iSouth Africa inezinto ezifunayo kwelase DRC ezomnotho kanti nabazepolitiki abala eSouth Africa banendawo lapha bemba khona okumbiwayo phansi okomnotho. So kungaba liqiniso phela engqondweni zabantu ngoba labo hulumeni abavumi ukuthi bawahoxisa amabutho abo basazoqhubekela phambili besilwa njalo.
Thank you so much, Siyabonga, Dr. Swanda. Ms. Zimbabweans Chambara, what's your last word to listeners and also those who can help this war stop? If you have the opportunity to talk to SADC and EAC today and also the DRC and M23, what's your message to them?
My hope and prayer is that the innocent civilians' lives are spared. That is my biggest hope and prayer. And the second issue is that politicians within these two regions must really consider this issue seriously because it has affected economies within these two regions for so many years. It might not look like it, but we all have been affected by this war. South Africa has got a huge number of Congolese refugees, but the biggest number goes to that same Rwanda where they are being accused of sponsoring rebels. So even Rwanda itself on its part, it needs to make sure that the conflict is done away with so that then the refugees within its territory can go back to their homes, and that helps everybody.
Thank you so much. Dr. Swanda, your last word. If you have the opportunity to talk to SADC and EAC, M23 and also DRC, what message can you give them?
Well, I think one of the major statements that President Ramaphosa has said in the past and coming now has been that we need to silence guns in Africa. There is a commitment, there is a need, to commit to the silencing of guns. But I think that a commitment to the silencing of guns should not be just to try and muzzle, the people trying to talk or show disgruntlement. A commitment to silence the guns must be a commitment to see peace, prosperity, and true constitutionalism taking place in Africa to the extent that all the engagements that are taking part and that are being considered are not engagements that are only for the interests of the politicians but not for the people, because the people that are affected by these political decisions are the ordinary people.
Thank you so much. We have to stop here. Thanks to our guests, Dr. Vusumuzi Swanda, Ms. Diana Zimbabweans Chambara, and Mr. Fidelis Mukarati, who are all in South Africa, for joining us on Live Talk. This brings us to the end of our show. Signing off in Washington, I am Jonga Kandemiri.